Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're going deep with a topic that's crucial to both science and philosophy, laws of nature. Our listener is a philosopher, so we're diving into the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy's entry on laws of nature. And we're going to dissect each idea with the precision you crave.
Absolutely. We'll explore why philosophers even care about laws of nature. We'll look at the different ways people try to define them, and we'll grapple with whether those laws are fixed or flexible. That's where human supervenience comes in.
Okay, so let's start with the basics, I guess. Why should a philosopher, someone dealing with, abstract ideas, care about laws of nature? That seems like it should be the domain of scientists who observe the physical world.
Because laws of nature aren't just about describing what happens, they're about trying to understand the fundamental structure of reality. They touch on really deep philosophical questions about causation, explanation, modality, like what's possible and what's necessary, and even the nature of knowledge itself.
So it's not enough to just observe that, the sun rises every day.
Yeah.
Philosophers want to know why it rises, what kind of necessity is at play, and whether it had to rise that way.
Exactly. And that leads to a central puzzle. What distinguishes a true generalization, like everyone here is seated, from a genuine law of nature, like nothing travels faster than light? Both are true, but only one seems to reflect a deep, non-accidental regularity in the universe.
It's like the difference between a lucky streak at the casino and the laws of probability underlying the games. One is a coincidence, the other reflects something fundamental about, like, how chance operates.
Precisely. A classic example philosophers use is the comparison between uranium spheres and gold spheres. The statement, all uranium spheres are less than a mile in diameter, is likely a law, while all gold spheres are less than a mile in diameter isn't, even though both seem universal right now.
So there's something about uranium itself that seems to prevent it from forming spheres larger than a mile wide. It's not just that we haven't observed any, it's that such a sphere seems physically impossible, given the nature of uranium.
You've hit the nail on the head. This leads us to different attempts to pin down what makes a statement a law of nature. One influential approach is the systems approach.
The systems approach. Sounds organized. Tell me more.
Sure. So the idea here is that laws are part of the most powerful and simple true deductive systems. Imagine a competition where different systems, sets of axioms, and rules of inference are judged on their ability to derive true statements about the world. The winning system, the one that's most comprehensive and elegant, contains the laws of nature.
So it's like finding the most concise and powerful set of rules that can explain everything we observe, like a cosmic instruction manual, but one that's also beautifully elegant.
That's a great way to put it. For instance, quantum theory, being a powerful and simple system, might imply a limit on the size of uranium spheres, making that limit a law within that system.
But wouldn't that make laws of nature dependent on our human ideas of simplicity and power? What if aliens have a completely different way of understanding the universe? Would their laws be different from ours?
That's a key challenge for the systems approach. Critics argue that it makes laws uncomfortably mind-dependent. They say simplicity and strength are not objective features of the universe. They depend on our cognitive limitations and preferences.
So a system that seems simple and elegant to us might appear convoluted and messy to a being with a different cognitive makeup. It's like saying the beauty of a symphony depends on the listener's ear, not on some inherent quality of the music itself.
Exactly. And there's another problem. Some universal truths seem accidental rather than law-like, even if they fit neatly into the best system. Imagine a universe with planets inexplicably arranged in a perfect line. It's true, it might even be deducible from some simple principle, but it doesn't feel like a deep law governing the universe.
It's like finding a random pattern in a pile of leaves. It might be aesthetically pleasing, but it's not a reflection of some deep principle governing the arrangement of leaves.
Right. This has led some philosophers to favor an alternative approach, the universals approach. This view seeks a deeper connection between properties and their behavior, not just a systematized description of it.
Okay, this is where things get really interesting. So instead of focusing on systems, the universals approach looks for a special relationship between universals, those abstract properties that exist independently of particular things.
Precisely. Think back to our uranium spheres. The universals approach would say there's a special relationship, a kind of necessity, between the universal uraniumness and the universal being less than a mile in diameterness.
So it's not just that uranium spheres happen to be small, it's that being uranium somehow necessitates that size limit. It's like there's an invisible metaphysical leash preventing uranium from going wild.
That's the core idea. But naturally, there are challenges. Critics point to the identification problem. What exactly is this necessitation relationship? How do we even know it exists? And what makes it different from a mere correlation or coincidence?
It's like we're trying to peer into the machinery of the universe and see what makes these properties tick. But before we get too lost in the world of universals, there's another big concept we need to unpack. Human supervenience.
Ah, yes. The idea that laws of nature are ultimately determined by the arrangement of basic facts in the universe. No spooky extra ingredients needed.
Okay, hold on. So if we knew the exact position and properties of every single particle in the universe, we could, in principle, deduce all the laws of nature. Like there's a giant cosmic spreadsheet where column A is, facts and column B is laws, and column B is just a formula based on column A.
That's the essence of Humean supervenience.
Mm.
But critics argue that it's not so simple. They devise these thought experiments where the same set of facts seems compatible with different sets of laws.
Okay, give me one of these mind-bending thought experiments.
Imagine a universe with only one particle, zipping around at a constant speed. Is that speed a law of nature or just a brute fact because there's nothing to change it? Like if we added another particle, would they have to move at the same speed? Human supervenience seems to suggest they would, but that feels counterintuitive.
Whoa, so you're saying a universe with just one particle could have different speed limits depending on what exactly? That's messing with my reality. It's like saying the rules of a game change depending on how many players are present, even if they're not interacting.
Exactly. This raises questions about whether laws genuinely govern possibilities or if they're just summaries of what happens to be the case in our particular universe.
This makes me wonder, could there be parallel universes with the same stuff but different laws, just because things were arranged slightly differently at the beginning?
That's a question that keeps physicists and philosophers up at night. But the challenges to Humean supervenience don't stop there. Some philosophers, known as anti-realists, go even further and question whether laws of nature exist at all.
Hold on, wait a minute. Are they saying that gravity is just a suggestion? Like, if I drop this microphone, it's not going to fall because of some law?
Not quite. Anti-realists aren't denying the regularity of the universe. They're skeptical about whether these regularities reflect objective, mind-independent laws. Some argue that the problems we've been discussing show that laws aren't out there to be discovered. Others propose that law statements are more about our attitudes towards generalizations, not about the universe itself.
So instead of saying it's a law that nothing travels faster than light, we're really saying we're super confident in this generalization, and we'd be really surprised if it turned out to be false.
That's one way to put it. But anti-realists face their own set of puzzles. If laws don't exist, how do we make sense of scientific practice, counterfactuals, and the seemingly objective nature of causality? It seems like stripping laws from our ontology leaves a lot of things unexplained.
It's like saying that evolution is just a story we tell ourselves, not an objective process shaping life on Earth. It seems to undermine the very foundations of scientific inquiry. But if we're not going the anti-realist route, are there other alternatives to the Humean picture of laws?
Yes. Some philosophers embrace anti-reductionism, arguing that laws are real but not reducible to mere patterns in the mosaic of facts.
Anti-reductionism. So they think laws have a kind of independent existence, maybe even shaping the mosaic rather than being determined by it.
Exactly. Some anti-reductionists like Maudlin see laws as fundamental entities, maybe even the bedrock of reality, shaping what's possible and explaining why the universe is the way it is. Others, like Carroll, ground laws in deeper causal or explanatory relations, arguing that they're more than just summaries of what happens, they're active principles governing the unfolding of events.
So for these philosophers, laws are more like the architect's blueprint than the finished building. They dictate the possibilities, the constraints, and the potentialities of the universe itself.
Precisely. But this raises new challenges. If laws are so fundamental, why is nature so uniform? And can we really account for all the work laws do, like explaining, predicting, supporting counterfactuals by appealing to causation or explanation alone?
It's like we're trying to figure out if the laws are the puppet masters or the puppets themselves.
Mm-hmm.
But regardless of which side you take in this debate, there's another philosophical conundrum that looms large: the problem of induction. How do we go from observing a bunch of instances to believing in a general law?
Ah, yes, the classic problem that's plagued philosophers for centuries. We see the sun rise every day, but can we be absolutely sure it will rise tomorrow? Is there any rational justification for believing that the future will resemble the past?
It's like that old joke. Scientist throws a lit match into a bucket of gasoline 1,000 times and nothing happens. He declares, "See, it's perfectly safe." Then on the 1,001st try, boom. Just because something happened a certain way in the past doesn't guarantee it will always happen that way.
Exactly. And this connects back to our discussion about laws. Goodman argued that only law-like statements are genuinely confirmable by their instances, meaning if a statement could be a law if it were true, then observing it repeatedly strengthens our belief in it.
So it's not just about the sheer number of observations. It's about whether those observations point to something that has the character of a law. But isn't there a danger of circularity here? How do we know if a statement could be a law without already having some idea of what laws are?
That's a key challenge. Some philosophers argue that any generalization can be confirmed if we have the right background beliefs. Others maintain that laws play a unique role in justifying our inductive leaps. It's a subtle but crucial distinction that lies at the heart of the debate about induction.
So even if I see 1,000 white swans, I can't conclude that all swans are white unless I have some reason to believe that swan color is governed by a law-like regularity rather than mere chance.
Precisely. And this brings us back to the core philosophical puzzle. What makes a statement law-like? It seems like we need some independent criteria for identifying potential laws before we can even begin to use induction to confirm them. It's a philosophical chicken and egg problem.
It's enough to make your head spin. But amidst all this complexity, there's another fascinating question about laws. Do they involve necessity? Does a law dictate that things must happen a certain way, or could things have been different?
That's a question that takes us deep into the realm of modality. What's possible, necessary, and contingent. The majority view is that laws of nature are contingent, meaning they could have been different.
So they're not like mathematical truth, which seem to hold in all possible worlds. It's like the rules of a game, our universe plays by certain rules, but we can imagine other universes with different rule books.
Exactly. But there's a group of philosophers, the necessitarians, who take a more radical stance. They argue that all laws are necessary truths, meaning they couldn't have been otherwise.
Wait, so they're saying if it's a law that gravity works a certain way, then it's impossible to even conceive of a universe where gravity works differently.
That's the core idea. They might draw on Kripke's work on a posteriori necessities, arguing that some truths, like the identity of water with H2O, are discovered through experience but nonetheless necessary. They apply this reasoning to laws of nature, suggesting that even though we discover them through observation, they couldn't have been otherwise.
But doesn't that make scientific discovery kind of pointless? If the laws are already fixed and necessary, what's the point of experimenting and observing? Wouldn't we be better off just sitting in armchairs and thinking really hard?
That's a common objection to necessitarianism. Critics argue that if laws are necessary truth, they should be accessible through pure reason, like mathematical theorems. The fact that we need empirical investigation to uncover them suggests they're not necessary in the same way.
It's like saying we should be able to figure out the laws of physics by meditating on the concept of motion, rather than by actually observing how objects move in the world. It seems to disconnect laws from the very reality they're supposed to govern.
Precisely. And there's another puzzle for necessitarians: how to handle counterfactuals. If a law dictates that something must happen, how can we even talk about what might have happened if the circumstances were different?
It's like saying, well, yes, the vase shattered when it hit the ground, but it had to shatter because of the laws of physics, so it's meaningless to ask what would have happened if it had been made of rubber. It seems to shut down the whole realm of hypothetical possibilities that make thought experiments and scientific reasoning so fruitful.
Right. And this leads to another crucial question about laws. Do they actually explain things, or is it all just a bit circular?
This is where things get really meta. We've talked about what makes something a law, but now we're asking what those laws do in the grand scheme of things.
Exactly. Critics of the Humean view, where laws are just patterns in the mosaic of facts, argue that appealing to those laws to explain the mosaic itself is circular. It's like saying the arrangement of furniture in a room explains the arrangement of furniture in the room.
It's like explaining why the traffic light is red by saying because it's displaying the color red. It doesn't really tell us anything about the underlying mechanisms or the reasons behind the phenomenon.
Precisely. Some humans try to counter this by distinguishing between types of explanation. They might say that laws don't, metaphysically explain the existence of the mosaic, but they can still scientifically explain events within it.
So it's like saying the rules of chess don't explain why chess exists, but they do explain why the bishop moves diagonally. The rules operate within a given framework, but they don't explain the framework itself.
That's a helpful way to think about it. Other Humeans explore notions of grounding to clarify the relationship between laws and their instances, but even grounding might not be the same as explanation.
It's like we're trying to understand the difference between describing a phenomenon and truly understanding it. We can describe the symptoms of a disease, but that's not the same as understanding its causes and underlying mechanisms. Similarly, we can describe the regularities of the universe, but that doesn't automatically give us a deep understanding of why those regularities exist.
Exactly. And this leads us to a question that's particularly relevant for philosophers of science. Can we have laws in other sciences besides physics? We talk about the laws of economics, the laws of psychology, but are these really on the same level as, say, Newton's laws of motion?
It seems like there's a difference in kind. Physics seems to deal with fundamental laws that govern the behavior of matter and energy at the most basic level. But other sciences deal with more complex systems where there are exceptions, variations, and a lot more messiness.
That's a key point. Special sciences like economics or psychology often face exceptions due to the underlying physical conditions. Think of the law of supply and demand. It works well in a free market, but government interventions like price controls can disrupt the expected outcomes.
It's like trying to apply the rules of Newtonian mechanics to a flock of birds. Sure, each individual bird obeys the laws of physics, but the flock as a whole exhibits emergent behavior that's not fully captured by those laws.
Some philosophers argue that special science generalizations are more like rules of thumb, true in specific domains, but not universally applicable.
So it's not that they're false, it's just that they have a more limited scope. They're context-dependent, operating within certain parameters, and subject to various exceptions.
Precisely. And that leads to a broader question. What's the relationship between laws in physics and laws in other sciences? Are the special sciences ultimately reducible to physics, or do they have their own unique sets of laws governing their domains?
It's like asking whether the rules of chess are ultimately reducible to the laws of physics governing the movement of the pieces. Sure, the pieces can only move in ways that are physically possible, but the rules of the game add a whole new layer of complexity and structure.
That's a great analogy. It highlights the challenge of reconciling the seemingly universal and exceptionless laws of physics with the more context-dependent and exception-ridden generalizations of the special sciences.
Wow, what a deep dive. We've gone from the nature of laws to the problem of induction to the very possibility of explanation. It's like we've opened a Pandora's box of philosophical puzzles.
Indeed. And it's a reminder that even something as seemingly straightforward as a law of nature can lead to a labyrinth of philosophical questions.
So for you, our philosophically inclined listener, what new questions or insights have emerged? What aspects of lawhood are you still grappling with? This deep dive has only scratched the surface, and there's a whole universe of philosophical exploration waiting for you.
Absolutely. Keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep the philosophical fire burning.
Until next time on The Deep Dive.